there. I need to step away and grab my notebook. I'm coming right back. Oh, there we go. So we do expect a quorum. So far, we need 4 for a quorum. Both Connor and Jeff Collins said they would be here. I appreciate Judy Kerman is here, and George and Jude Salato. So Judy Kerman, I was looking for you. It sent me another email a little while back that had more comments. And then I was looking to find it again and I couldn't find it. I don't know if you know what date you sent that, because I sent your comments to everybody, but then I think I didn't send some to people.
Well, I probably have it. I just need to find it.
Yeah, and I need to find it.
Just a minute.
And I did a search on your name, but
well, the last thing you sent me was at my personal email rather than my Woodstock email, so you're looking in the wrong place.
So I should be looking up Jay Kerman.
Yeah.
Ah.
Try that.
I will try that. Scenic overlay. Yes, that did the trick. Yes. So I'm gonna forward that to everybody as well.
But then I responded to your last thing.
Yes.
You got that.
Well, let me go
pull a little bit of additional.
Yeah, let me go pull it up. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, and it's not.
Well, what I sent you like this morning, no, you sent back to me with my comment, those just last couple of comments.
Yeah, yeah, scan quickly through the proposed code. Oh, and that's what I popped into and sent it to everybody.
Right.
Right. So I did get that. And let me just send your last thing to everybody so that I have something that everybody has.
But that was the previous one that was longer.
Right. That's what I'm saying is I'm going to pop that in. So let me do attachments. I just want to make sure everything's in one place. Okay. Alrighty. So everything should be in one place now. Let me go back and go back to the Zoom. So I need to, I'm going to, when I have to walk away again and grab my cell phone, I need to text Jeff Collins and Connor and say, where the heck are you? So I'm coming right. And even though we have a 7-member board, we do have 2 members that have medical things going on. So we're not expecting those. And then we had 2 members that couldn't make it. So that's what we're doing there.
I just found the one I sent you. It was the was the 9th of August. That said I would be happy to attend, and then I.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't terribly long, but it was a little bit more than. But it's pretty much the same comment.
Yeah. Well, hang on. I need to get Yeah, Connor says he can't find the link, and I know I had put it in there.
Well, if he looks at the town board, at the town website, it's right there in the calendar.
Correct. And I had put it in one of the emails.
I know you did.
Yeah. So, but I'm going to resend it to Connor. There we go. So, oh, and of course now I didn't have any of the other emails in it. Yeah, I didn't click on, I'm going to do it again. There we go. So now it's an email that has everything. Sorry for all the emails that come in. Oh, Jeff Collins is waiting in the waiting room. Good.
I didn't experience a waiting room. Or maybe you just,
I got you right away.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna, yay. Okay. Okay, and there's Jeff. So Jeff, we're waiting for our quorum. Connor said he could also make it. And so he was having trouble finding the link, and I just resent him a link to the link. And we're hoping we get him in a moment. Okay. Well, anyway, I'll keep an eye on when he comes in. So the purpose of this call, and I know I sent an email out with what the basic topics are, but I do have an agenda, and I'll just start going through what the status is of everything. Moving stuff around just a little bit here. Okay. And I will show my list and share my screen. And I'll do a share. So we don't yet have a quorum, but I'm still starting the meeting, and hopefully I'll see when Connor comes in so that I can admit him. Okay, I'm just noting we have Judy. Okay, we have Jude Salato. We have George. And we have Jeff. And we are waiting for Connor, but my fingers are crossed. Okay. So let me go back to where I was here. There we go.
Are you gonna, I guess Jude is a member, so you will have a quorum if you get one more.
We have a quorum if we have one more, yes. So Jude, Jeff, and I are the members. We have two members that have medical issues and won't be there for that reason, and one member that said that he wasn't going to be able to be here. So we need Connor to have the quorum because we know the other three. And we may alter if the two that have medical issues and likely won't be joining us, if they do resign, then we'll have a team of 5, and then a quorum will be 3, and we just about always have a group of 3. So it may go that way, but we have to see how people feel about things. But anyway, all that being said, I'm just gonna, oh, there we go. I got something back. No, I'm gonna text, just let me go back. For some reason, no, I'm entering it manually. Oh, on his phone. Okay, he's entering it manually on his phone. So, okay. But I'll kind of go through status of things in general, and then we'll officially start the meeting when he comes. But we need to get going. So anyway, the agenda, I did not send this out, but we know the main topics today are STR and signs. But just to let people know where things stand on other topics that we have going on, the Housing Oversight Task Force does continue to meet. The public comment and incorporation of input continues. Oh, yay, we have Connor. Hi, Connor. Let's see if we hear Connor. Yay, as Connor's waving. Okay, so you're on mute, Connor, but anyway, so we're just going, I'm sharing my screen, but you probably don't see that from your phone, but that's okay. So I'm going through status of what's going on, and then we're going to get into the 2 topics really for today. So Housing Oversight Task Force, public comment and incorporation of input continues. No public hearing date is yet set, but again, public comment is happening and the input is being incorporated. So I have dates, I have key dates of the progress here, but anyway, that's that. Wellhead protection, of course, that's old news because it's back in December. I'm still paying attention to when it goes into the online code, so it's on the list for that reason. We'll come back to the STR committee. The sign committee, back in April, the supervisor asked the ZRC to pick up the sign committee. We do have a committee for that, and the committee has been meeting, and right now we're getting input. So I know Connor is officially on the committee, but has not been able to attend a meeting yet. But Connor does work during the day. It's hard to get everybody, and we've been having meetings during the day. But we have to switch it around so we can find the time Connor can make it. But anyway, the sign committee is active and working, and we're looking into different topics regarding signs. And what we're doing for starters is we are going out doing some door-to-door with the business owners in the center of town and trying to get with all of them to get their input of what they think is and is not working. So that's the sign committee work is moving along. So that's that. I'll come back to STR and I'll come back to scenic overlay in a moment. The next ZRC meeting we normally meet the 2nd and 4th Monday of the month, but in the summer we've been meeting 1 Monday of the month. So if people feel that we have to add another meeting this month, we can talk about it. But unless people say, let's have another meeting, our next meeting is going to be September 11th. And then when we get back then after the summer, then we're back to 2nd and 4th Monday. So I wanted to go through those topics. So we'll go in detail into the STR and the scenic overlay, which is the main focus for this call. Does anybody want to adopt the agenda? Jude, yay, Jude, adopted agenda. Anybody want to second that? Oh, I second, yay, Connor. We have Jude, Connor, and Jude was saying something.
No, I was going to vote, but then I would like to say something. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yay, we're good. Approved. Okay, and I'm going to say the meeting started at 6:40 because that's when we had our quorum. Start 6:40. Okay, adopt agenda. Okay, and go ahead, Jude.
You said the HOTF is continuing to meet?
Well, yes, we haven't had a meeting for quite a while.
Okay, that's all I was wondering because I know I haven't seen anything or anything. So
yeah, the next meeting is planned for a week from today.
Okay.
So the next meeting is planned for a week for today, and theoretically it should be on the town calendar. Sometimes things happen and things don't happen as they should, but theoretically it'll be on the town calendar. But 10 o'clock on a week from today.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, a week from tomorrow, because it's Tuesdays. So 10 o'clock a week from tomorrow would be the 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, sorry for the confusion there, but yes, the 22nd on Tuesday. Okay, so we'll talk about STR committee first, because that's going to be the shorter conversation. Then we'll get into scenic overlay. So the STR committee did finish their work, and they did pass it just yesterday. And so I forwarded an email that has what they provided. And of course, Supervisor McKenna did ask us to pick up STRs way back in April, and the STR committee was saying, hey, wait, but we're really going to finish. And they really did finish. So they finished yesterday, and they sent a document. I took their document, and just because it was 12 pages, I thought it would be easier to navigate if I put page numbers at the bottom, and if I made the headers that when you look online, if you go to view, when you're in Word and you go to view and then you click the navigation pane box, then I took the headers and I made them headings, so you'll see them on the left. If we wanted to have the document usable hard copy, I could have made them, chapter numbers and then done a table of contents, but we do a lot of stuff online. So I thought it was sufficient to put page numbers on the bottom and just make the headings that were already there headers. And pretty much that's all I did. The only other thing I did is I made a heading of contributors, but I didn't change any of the body of anything they did. So in any event, I provided the document as they sent it, and then the document that I just made it easier to navigate. So we'll need to decide what we want to do. I know in this meeting, we had talked about how we like the idea. We wanted to look at the Hurley Law, because the Hurley Law is very highly regarded in our county. So we can look at what the STR committee did. As I reviewed it, I did not read every word, but I understood the gist of what they did. They gave background information, they gave some statistics, and they gave a list of things that they think that the law ought to be updated to convey, but they didn't actually update the law. And so we can take what they started with. We should understand what they did and why they recommended what they did, but we can also still look at the Hurley Law, and then we can, make just like we did for scenic overlay. We took the actual law, we made updates, and then we said, here's what we think we ought to be looking at. So that's my expectation for STR. The STR committee did not actually give law verbiage perfectly to say, hey, here's the law as it exists today, it ought to look like this. They didn't actually quite take it that far. You can kind of take some of what they said and pop it in there, but in any event, they didn't do that final piece. But what we're going to want to do, I believe, is review what they recommended. We've already thought in our committee that we want to review the Hurley Law and bring out from both of those things a recommendation. So that's the process I anticipate. Connor, Jude, and Jeff had said they were interested in working on this. And if you're still interested in working on it, then I think that you all can get going on it, and we can talk about it next when we meet next in approximately a month. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions or thoughts or different directions that you think we ought to be doing.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi. So, I did, and I'm very sorry that I've been, a little bit spotty in my availability. I've taken on a job that's kept me in Big Indian most of the week, but that's through the month of July into September. That being said, I went to that meeting about ADUs in Kingston.
Oh, right.
I have some stuff I can share the next time we meet. I have video that I took that's also available there, but just a couple takeaways. They are definitely pushing for ADUs as a means of increasing the allotment of affordable housing.
Right.
I think I think that just going into it, that's obviously for me an important lens to look at even STRs through. But that being said, when we do meet next time, and after I show that, I was thinking, I had asked them a couple questions about the idea of a sort of multifamily ADU, and it's not really, there's nothing inherently illegal about it, but no one seems to be really trying this out, and it's something I would
Okay.
like to consider discussing in terms of if we are serious about keeping the scale of these footprints low while making a dent in the housing crisis, then the idea of being able to say create 2 units in the same footprint you would be able to do one in should be attractive to us.
Well, and the proposed law does say, does allow moving, right? The current law says you can have 1 ADU by right. The new law says you can have 2 with some restrictions over, you know, you can't have STR in the first one, et cetera. So and it does allow that the 2 ADUs could be 1 building. So, so in any event, so that would be what I call multifamily. But anyway, so that's really a Housing Oversight Task Force recommendation that you might want to send in. But as you
Just
said,
to be clear, Laura, the second ADU is not by right. Only the first ADU is by right.
but the second one is by special use permit.
Correct. It's not by right. I'm just saying it's not by right.
Well, right. So good clarification. So, okay, go ahead, Jude.
Without getting into the Housing Oversight Task Force proposals at this point, I just want to point out there's been a lot written, continually written, about how communities are trying to address their housing by allowing ADUs. I haven't seen one yet that says they're going to allow 2. These are places that have 0 and are talking about allowing 1. That's all I'll say right now, but I haven't seen any community that's talking about allowing 2. So we don't want to get wrapped up in this right now, but since Connor brought it up, we can talk about it more another time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But again, those comments need to be directed to the Housing Oversight Task Force, because the ZRC doesn't own the Housing Oversight Task Force law. We all can be given input to it, but we don't. Our purview is not the Housing Oversight Task Force law per se. So those comments should go to the Housing Oversight Task Force. To them, which would be the zoning updates at woodstockny.org is, you know, where you would send the things. So, okay. So anyway, so Connor, Jeff, and Jude, regarding the STR committee input, you know, looking at the Hurley STR law, but also really digesting what the STR, and I was pleased when I saw what the STR committee did. I thought it was it looked like a great piece of work, because it was very thoughtful and homework done and putting a lot of information in. So I do, my belief is that we as a team, it'll be you guys as a subgroup, would be just crawling through that to understand what all they did, but also then bridging between that and your own thoughts, that like the Hurley STR law, you know, what do we think about merging them together? Or anyway, but I think considering both is the answer. Do you all want to just go off and run with it? Or do we want to just talk about it more as a group? You know, sometimes we use these meetings as work sessions. I don't know whether as a subgroup you want to go off and work on the STR, or if you want that it can be, we use this meeting as work sessions regarding STR. So I just didn't know which way you guys wanted to do it.
I think it makes sense for Solid to do STR stuff. I think it's a big enough issue that I don't think a task force is, or a subcommittee of a committee that's only 5 people to begin with,
Right.
is useful.
I agree, Jeff.
Okay. So the committee will address, and I'm, yeah.
I do think it makes sense for us to kind of look it over and come prepared with some comments next time.
Yeah. Okay. So our priority is, we want to get through the scenic overlay. So we've talked about STR, and we have a let me just make a note here. Subgroup. And I'm totally fine with that. Okay. So the main topic for today is the scenic overlay. I should pull up the scenic overlay version 12, because that's what we're starting with. But we should first, I think it makes sense. I sent an email out a couple of minutes ago, because what that has is the latest thing that, you know, Judy Kerman has sent me a couple of emails, and I realized I haven't put the one in there, but we're going to look at what Judy had sent us, which is a couple of emails worth. We want to look at what George sent us. We want to look at what Michael Veach sent us. Well, Michael Veach actually came to the public hearing. So since we have Judy and George on, we'll do theirs first. I think it makes sense, frankly, to do George's first because it's a smaller piece. I think Judy's is going to have more conversation. So in the case anybody wants to jump off the call, I think that's the order that we'll do it in. I want to go back and look at, come back. Sorry. Getting that out of here. Yeah, I can't always see stuff.
You're putting it up on the,
Yeah, I'm gonna share
okay,
my
so I
screen.
will find it in my email then.
Yeah, and the issue, of course, that I have is when I have screen shared, some things are blocked off, and that's the issue that I'm having. Come on, there we go. Yay! All right, so I'm going to what I sent, and it's the latest thing that I sent. So the yeah, it's okay. So
The other
I'm
one.
looking. Yeah, the other one. So I'm going to download. This is what George sent. And George, thank you for joining. Well, thanks everybody for joining. And the thing should show up on he only had a couple of comments. Yeah, the yellow highlight was, I think, that what I had put in there because that was in response to what the county said. So the yellow highlight is what I put in response to it. Well, I said but what we put in response to what the county said.
And I have also commented on it.
Okay. Well, and we had the planning board had some comments and we incorporated the planning board comments. So I'm just making this so I can see it all. So, so this is George's comments. And George, I'm going to go first of all to the bottom because you sent that picture of roof glare, which I think ties in with some of, so you had some comments you added to the end here. Roof glare from a house, and you said that you and a neighbor could both see the glare. And then you talk about FAA regulations, recreational flight.
But no,
about drones.
the roof glare is my most important comment because coating metal roofs does not solve the problem. This roof is brown, conforms completely to the rules, but the problem is that even coated metal roofs can reflect like mirrors. The photograph doesn't really do it justice, but it's just like you had a reflective mirror on there. So I think it's just important simply to say that the roof should be non-reflected. After all, we make a big fuss about reflectivity of windows, but I think roofs should also be included. My neighbor and I have brought this up with the planning board and so on several times, but it seems to me if you're reforming the scenic overlay law, this is a good point to improve on this particular
Okay.
point.
And I want to look and see if I can find, because I know you have the whole law here. So let me just go through. And do you know which line it is that talked about the coding?
He commented on it. You just go down until you find his comment.
Yeah, there's my
There
comment.
it is.
Oh, there you go.
I have a question on the orange roof. How did that ever turn out?
So what was your question, Jeff?
This is for Jude. Whatever happened to the Oranger lawsuit about the roof line, about his shiny roof?
I think he lost, but that doesn't mean he fixed it. I don't know.
I was wondering if anyone knew what happened with that, because he was not given a C of O until he fixed it. I'm not sure if he ever fixed it or not.
I
Yeah,
have no idea, and I would like to know, actually.
I'm going to say enable editing, and I'm going to do a file save as.
anyway, that's my main point is just to tighten up the language or a couple of other edits.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
I previously commented on the need for a licensed drone operator, and then I went back and actually looked at the FAA rules, which are just very, very tight.
Yeah, well, George, before you go forward, I'm slow. I like to finish one thing before I go to the next thing. So what I'm trying to do here is, this is where we talk about the uncoded. So the recommendation you're making is specifically, we change these words, you'd remove the word uncoated, prohibition of highly reflective materials, such as, can I say metal
I have a suggestion.
coated or uncoated? Prohibition such as coated or uncoated, can I say coated or uncoated to make it clear that coated is also
No, you
prohibited?
just need to say metal siding if we really mean that. You don't have to say
Okay.
uncoated.
Okay,
You could even
So-
just say highly reflective materials, period.
okay, prohibited highly reflective materials. Such as, can I say such as metal siding and take out the word uncoated like we're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're giving examples of it. It's not a limiting example.
Right, so I'm just gonna say resolve.
You could just delete uncoated, just
Yeah.
prohibition.
Well,
of
I'm
highly
trying to do that, but the issue that I'm trying to do is I am trying to do that, but I'm going to delete the comment because it's not letting me change the word, because when I highlight it, it's got the comment. So so what I'm doing, I'm going to font and I'm doing a strike through and I'm doing it in red. I
Okay.
had to delete the comment before it would let me do that.
If you had tracking turned on, it would do that for you.
Oh. Sorry. Well, anyway, sorry. Yeah, apparently tracking is turned on because there it is. Yeah. So I was actually just making okay. So I've done that. And then
I'm confused. Are we saying people can't have metal roofs?
well,
No.
and this is a vote of the quorum. So we have a quorum of the zoning revision committee, and that's a very good point, Jude. So we have Connor, Jude, Jeff, and me. So we've had a recommendation from George that says, if you have a metal roof, even if you coat it, he showed that picture of all that glare. So what George is recommending is that we don't allow, because this roof is coated with an approved color. So here's an example of a coated roof, and here's what you get. So if we have a quorum and if we believe we should allow coated roofs, it's up to the four of us to vote. George is
I don't believe anything in that code. Go back to what the language says. And that's why I don't think you need to want to give examples. The use of building materials, colors, and textures designed to blend with natural environment and the prohibition of highly reflective materials, period, is all you need to say.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree.
If you start giving examples and you start getting muddled in as to what is or is not allowed.
Okay.
I agree with that, because then the planning board would be able to say, okay, prove to us that this is not reflective.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
that-
Okay.
And maybe there are metal
So I
roofs
need
that
to-
would work.
Yeah, I need to I need to do this again. So I hit I hit it the way I need to hit it.
There you go.
Yeah, I know. And I got to go back to the font to do it. I was trying to do it the quick way, but font color red.
You're doing it the unquick way, but whatever.
Well, no, I was trying to do it by the copy. I do the little paintbrush. I tried to do that, but then the thing with the paintbrush choice covered up the words I was trying to capture. So that's why I quit doing it that way. I tried to do it the quick way, but I was blocked. So I went the long way and it worked. Anyway, so Jude, I'll get to you. Why don't you go ahead, Jude?
So this was something that I didn't bring up last time or all the times we talked about this, because I think it's an area that we don't want to touch, but are solar panels reflective?
Ah,
Because I don't think we want to prohibit them. So
They're not likely to aim in a direction that's going to create much of a problem, because they've got to be aimed toward where the sun is, kind of at noon on.
Well,
the south.
Jude has a good point, because now that we've just said any highly reflective materials, solar panels shall be allowed. I'm going to say solar panels.
they are not as reflective as that roof, for example. And as you say, they're normally pointed upwards, as is that roof, of course. That roof is probably the ideal angle to coat with solar panels. So
So, yeah, anyway, so it looks like tracking is on. So anyway,
Can you say solar panels shall be allowed at the discretion of the planning board? Because if it's a blanket thing, I mean, several people have asked me why I don't have solar panels on my house. And that's one of the reasons. I mean,
well, it's a ZRC, we have 4 ZRC members. Do we want this to be at the discretion of the planning board, or would you just want to say solar panels shall be allowed?
I think that we can't say whether or not solar panels are reflective or not. At least not for the next, I have no idea whether they're reflective or not now. I have no idea what they're going to be in 10 years or 20 years from now. I'd rather just say no reflective materials.
Yep.
yeah.
Well,
I
so
mean,
Judy,
those things of Musk's company, their tiles are not reflective, in fact. But I mean, the question is whether, I mean, I think it should be left to the planning board, because if you put them on the roof, you may have that reflection problem. If you want to put them in your back garden, you'll have to cut down more trees, which is also a problem.
well, so Jeff and Jude and Connor,
Connor,
was that Jude?
I said, what are Connor's thoughts?
Connor's on mute. There you go. Thanks, Connor.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's not I don't think it's reasonable to just pile things onto the planning board. I do feel like saying solar panels are permitted feels like a broad stroke, and yet maybe if we were just to say that solar panels may, I mean, if we want, the question was for me was what would trigger the review. If they're building and they're doing, for example, the balloon tests that we've been talking about, then it should be clear whether or not their building profile is going to escape in a way where this becomes a concern. I mean, that's sort of my question. If it goes to the planning board, when?
Anytime it's in the scenic overlay, we have to look at the materials they're using, always.
I mean, I have to imagine that most companies would have the ability to put some sort of sheen. I wouldn't say coating. Maybe the better word rather than coating is matting, matting, to which reduces reflectivity with a coarser grit pattern on the thing. Because I mean, when you think about it, solar panels want to absorb as much as possible and reflect probably as little as possible.
That's exactly what it says when I do Google. Solar panels are meant to absorb light rather than reflect it.
So
They're taking the light and they're not doing the job.
so we don't need to say anything about solar panels then, because they're not considered reflective.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I feel like if they were and it became a problem, I mean, it's the same thing. It's covered. It should be non-reflective. So there should be options available that are matted.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's bad to actually delete that there, because
Yeah.
putting
And I'm
it
also
in
gonna
text when
delete
we're
the other.
talking about reflectivity. If anyone wants to see that they're not reflective, just go to the Saugerties transfer station where I take all my trash once a week. And there's a whole field of solar panels there, and they're not reflective.
Yeah, okay. So I did, I finally listened to Judy. I did this thing, Judy Kerman. I did this the right way. I did the delete because tracking is on. So I did the delete and it showed up as deleted without me manually doing it. And I took out the thing about the solar panels because we're expecting them to not be highly reflective. Okay. So it's a good question, Jude, that you brought up, because I think it was good to discuss it. So we've thought it through, and is there any more, based on what George gave input on, is there any other change to this area? Because we're doing George's input first. Any other conversation here? Okay.
I only have a slight addition to that. You know that there is also a handbook, a scenic overlay district handbook for applicants and design professionals, published by the Woodstock Planning Board. That obviously doesn't have the force of law, but it is a guide that I, and I'm sure other people, have used. So my only question is really whether somebody is going to update that guide to make it conform to the new law.
Well, that's a good question. Will PV update this? Okay.
You can ask Melissa that question. It would probably be something she would do.
Okay. Okay. So I made a note of that. So that wouldn't change the law, but that would be a thing outside the law. So, okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on before we move on to George's next comment? Okay. We're moving on. I think George, you only had 2 comments. So these are your comments here, and then you had some comments at the bottom.
No,
Proceed,
I was amazed when I read the original version that it said you had to have a licensed drone operator to do the drone photos. So I went and looked at the FAA laws, which is very strict, but it was modified by Congress very stupidly to allow recreational use of drones without a permit.
Right, and this is what you put here. I
I
think,
just
right?
put that there because that is their definition of what is a recreational flight. So it's not a recreational flight if money is involved, but not only that. So I think this is totally crazy. I just bring it up just for people's interest and amusement. But I can do a recreational flight with a drone over my property and for various reasons, but I cannot use the photos to sell my house. Or I cannot, it specifically says, I cannot even take a drone photo to show damage to my roof as a prelude to getting someone to repair my roof. And also,
I'm not sure that that's the correct interpretation, George.
this is the
I think
FAA.
it's a commercial use. So if you're paying somebody to inspect your roof, if you did it yourself,
If I have my own drone photo, my own drone, I cannot, which I use for recreational purposes, whatever the hell they are, because they don't define it. I cannot take a picture of my house
okay,
and use it for selling my house, which is ridiculous. It also says that you can't take photos of your child's baseball game and post them on the school website. That seems to me that is totally recreational use. So anyway, I just brought this up because it just shows the idiocy of some of these laws that come into being in the swamp that is DC, as we hear.
Well, so I'm not sure what, okay, so.
It really doesn't matter because we would require a licensed drone
Right,
operator.
yeah, I mean, it's that, but that costs money. I mean, I had to pay for, it's going to cost someone $700.
And we require an escrow for things like that, and the applicant pays for it.
So the words that we have, okay.
The wording is fine. Just forget about it, Laura. That's a digression. Okay, just delete my comment.
Okay, so we're in agreement keeping that's okay. So I'm just I will delete the comment. So,
yeah, I put this comment in an earlier version that I sent in before I read the FAA regulations.
Okay. So we're gonna go to Judy's. I'm gonna go back to the email because the email has Judy's stuff, but then the email also has well, I'm gonna look at Michael Veach's stuff and then we'll go to Judy's stuff. So Michael Veach's stuff, and he handed out pieces of paper at the meeting. I took a picture with my phone so I could share it. I don't have an email from Michael Veach, but I'm going to try to increase this so you can kind of read this.
Fine.
So, okay. So he had 6 items. Some of them would not change the law itself. And this is where at the public hearing, specifically, Michael brought this sheet of paper and Bill McKenna asked the board, because I said to Bill, well, technically speaking, the scenic overlay law is with the town board. Are you asking the ZRC go back and weigh in on these, or should the town board just weigh in because this law is with the town board? And the town board consensus was bring it back to the ZRC. So this was a specific public comment, and so we'll skim over the points. we don't need to deep dive into each one, but I want to skim over so we see what's here. So as we do Judy's points, we kind of already have in mind what Michael had said and the tree committee. Offers to assist in creating a document to be shared with realtors and real estate attorneys describing scenic overlay law as well as the town tree law. So that doesn't have to do with changing our law wording. The tree committee requests the planning board designated liaison to keep us informed of tree related matters. So we can be thinking about that. Be advised the Woodstock Tree Committee is an advisory committee, cannot enforce town law. Happy to advise on a case-by-case basis. So the first two are just process things, don't have to do with changing any words.
Can I comment on one of them?
Yes.
On item 2, my understanding, unless the law has been changed since I noticed it, is that the tree committee has jurisdiction when it is along 212 and maybe 375.
Mm-hmm.
And we rarely get a case like that. When we do, we are in touch with them. I would like to see them have a broader mandate, but I don't think they have it.
Right. Yeah, I think they'd like a broader mandate too.
I'm sure they would.
To have.
I mean, one of the comments in my email was I would really like to see the entire town be covered with the prohibition against clear cutting.
Well, right, and we're going to get to your stuff in a minute. So, yeah, okay. So, Woodstock recommends money be budgeted to enable drone mapping of the entire scenic overlay district to create a baseline for future scenic overlay issues that come before the planning board. And this is probably this wouldn't cause us to change the wording in our law, but I'm interested in people's thoughts on this because I know the way we have our law written, we have it written that before that the planning board may require escrow and drone, or require drone photos before a project is done so that we can see what things look like and we can compare the after to the before. But the point of item number 3 here is that there could be
my response is entirely up to the town board. We do not allocate money to anybody in this task force. If the town board feels they want to do this, put money in the budget and go for it. We have no control over this. It's not up to us.
Well, the reason why I'm hoping for your opinion, and it could be Connor's and Judy's opinion as well, is is that the way we have our law drafted, it only requires the drone mapping before a project is done when the applicant comes in with the project before it gets done. But we don't know whether they've already cut down 1 million trees before they came to apply. So I don't know whether we want to recommend that the town board, whether we want to weigh in and say, yes, town board, we like this as an idea, or do we want to just stay away from it totally and just say, town board, you decide?
Can I say something about this?
Yes, please.
First of all, I use the overflight photographs that the state does every 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And that gives us a baseline. That said, I mean, that gives a baseline that's probably going to be more up to date on some regular basis than doing a drone mapping once. But as I said in one of my emails, to do a drone mapping that includes consideration of the view shed would be a one-time thing that is worth doing.
Right.
And it would give us a baseline for forest cover, even though that's not going to remain static, but it's a good place to start.
Yeah, and to Jeff's point too, we didn't include that language because we couldn't mandate funds, but I think as a committee, I'm certainly in support of recommending to the town board that they support a one-time baseline drone mapping, specifically of the scenic overlay. It's investment.
So based on hang on. Based on Judy's point is there's the from up high looking down, and then the view shed is a different look. So Connor, when you say you're in support of it, are you talking about the view shed, meaning kind of you're looking horizontally? Are you talking about way up high looking down?
I would say both, like a comprehensive mapping of the scenic overlay to establish a baseline and really delineate the protected areas and buffers that we want to see respected. I mean, again, for a one-time thing, I think getting the horizontal view is definitely more pertinent since that's what the technology is allowing us to do a little more easily. But why not both? Let's get the actual state.
Okay, and let me ask Judy one more question before I go to Jeff. So Judy, when you look at the every 5 years thing, if you wanted to, and now they put a new map on, 5 years later, they put a new map. Can you still access the one from 5 years
Yes.
prior?
Yes.
Every
What
5
I'm
years.
downloading is photographs, basically. And with slight distortion, they tell me a great deal about what has changed between the most recent two or however many back I've kept. I've got them back to 2013.
Yeah, cool, excellent. Okay, that being said, Jeff, I know you had your hand up.
I mean, if we're gonna do non-law recommendations, I have no problem adding that, but we haven't done that in the past. So if you're not, and
Okay.
if you're gonna do one, you can't just do one of these. You gotta recommend that they do it every couple of years, probably. So it's really up to the town board if you want to spend the money. I don't really care.
Yeah,
I can
okay,
make it happen one way or the other.
right, to do. And Judy, did you have something to say? Jude Salato?
Judy, Judith.
Okay, Jude.
Yes, doesn't the Google Maps satellite view also show some of this, a lot of this? And then my question to Judy Kerman is, because she's more familiar with this, can you go back and look at historical Google Map satellite?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I
That would
don't
be
know.
something worth. That would be something worth finding out because I certainly I've looked
I-
at them. They show a lot.
I use the flyovers
Right.
because I know where to get them,
Right.
and they are fairly high resolution. Maybe Google is better now. On the other hand, Google Street View is 7 or 8 years out of date for my house. So
Well, I'm talking about the satellite view, which might also be out of date, but it gives a pretty good picture of what it looks like.
theoretically, it should be completely up to date, but I haven't used it because I use the orthographic materials from the state.
Right.
So when you say use the flyover from the state, Judy, you did say a few minutes ago that you can see the old stuff. You can go back to 2013.
I keep them.
Oh, because you
Since I
keep them.
started downloading them, and it may be that older ones are still up on the state.
Oh, so you have them because you keep them, but it may be, so this goes back to, we might want to do our own because then we know we have it. Whereas if you're relying on what the state does and you go tomorrow, they might have already changed it. And
No. I'm fairly certain that they keep the old ones up there. I
Okay.
downloaded the old ones starting when I started doing GIS, and I keep them because
Right.
I can look at changes over time.
Mhm.
And I
So-
sometimes do.
Sorry, can I just interject there? There are two advantages. They actually go back to 2004. They're all there online. And the other big difference with Google satellites is these are taken when there are no leaves on the trees. So the view is much better. And I
They
use them.
go over in the winter, and you can really see a lot.
Yeah.
You have
Right.
to figure out what is deciduous tree shadow versus bare land, but that's not that hard.
Yeah. Okay. So I see Jude. Is your hand up, Jude?
Yes, my hand is up. So my recommendation is that we do make that suggestion to the town board that it will make it simpler, more effective for the town to enforce these laws if they do have this drone footage. And I think since there are all these other resources available, the horizontal view, what you're seeing when you're looking up or from certain vantage points is probably more important than what you see from the sky. But there are a lot of open fields in the scenic overlay that no one will ever see.
Right.
So I think that horizontal one is probably the most critical.
Okay, and I agree with that. And I know we don't want to spend too much time on one topic because we got a lot still to do. So I mean, Connor agrees. Connor says yes. Jude says yes. I say yes. And Jeff, I think you just want to probably have us move on. So
Yeah, I do. We can't control this, so it's not up to us.
yeah, okay. But I think that the town board is interested in our recommendations. So I think that's our as a consensus of what's on the meeting tonight. Enforcement. We're not going to get into that because we'll need to do that too. So here's the one. So this is interesting. WC recommends any building permits issued in the scenic overlay include a bond to cover tree protections during construction. All permit applications should be screened using the drone mapping baseline for any potential clearing prior to the application. So this is an interesting thing. So here it's saying get a bond. If somebody does a building permit for the scenic overlay, get a bond money from them right away to cover or escrow. He doesn't call it escrow. I think that's what he means. It is maybe the law should require that if somebody's going to do a scenic overlay work, always require an escrow so that we have money to fix whatever they messed up with trees.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, and Jeff's got his hand up. Jeff, your thought?
In general, I like the idea, but how do we determine the amount of the escrow?
That's a good question.
I mean, the damage could be hundred thousands of dollars.
Right.
Could be 10, multiple hundred thousands of dollars, depending what they do.
So
So
Judy or
I don't know how to control the amount here.
okay, so Judy and Connor, Judy who's on the Kerman, who's on the planning board, and Connor who was on the planning board. In general, when escrow, do either of you have a sense of in general when escrow is collected? Do you know how it's determined how much escrow? Because you have to have escrow because you're going to pay the planner.
I think on the whole, Melissa calculates it based on her experience of this. And I would suggest that we would consult a forester. We have a good one that we've been using to make a suggestion about this. Something that somebody who's going to build can manage, but on the other hand is enough that they're going to want to get it back. And so they'll be careful.
Exactly, to get an idea.
But
Okay.
the ultimate escrow, you
I
have.
heard two things at once.
Right.
I see Jeff's hand up and George's hand up.
George,
George,
go first. You started first, George.
go ahead, George.
No, I just wanted to make the point. The ultimate escrow is the denial of a certificate of occupancy. So, I mean, it says on the planning board, your approval to go ahead, that they can deny that.
Yeah, but the CFO is where it's really going to bite, George, because if we say, go ahead, you can do your project, and then they damage the trees a lot during the project, at that point, we've already given them approval to go ahead. They don't have a CFO yet.
Yeah. That's
But
what I mean.
You're saying it's harder.
You're saying the same thing. I think you're saying the same thing. The CFO is the ultimate penalty.
Yeah.
But the CFO is the ultimate penalty, but I think I heard Judy Kerman say, if the planning board has said, oh, go ahead, then it's more awkward to deny the CFO at the end. Judy Kerman.
We totally did. They totally did it for Oranger. Totally did it for Oranger. No problem.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And Jude, you have your hand up.
Can I just add to this too?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff. Your turn.
So the other part, so there's three parts of this. One, I agree that the CFO is the ultimate enforcement mechanism. Two, how do we know what the bonds amount should be set at? Three, how do we know who's going to say that they overcut? What agency, what authority is going to say they've overcut? And I'm just going to, go through, give you the example of the school. When I did the school, we had a plan to cut certain numbers of trees. Our demolition crew cut a little bit too many trees. And we agreed with the planning board to just replant those. Okay, it wasn't scenic overlay, but yet it's the only solution we could come up with. So
Right.
if there'd been this bond, we would have lost, I don't know, whatever numbers of monies the planning board thought was reasonable, which may not have been reasonable to us. For a simple mistake. So it's kind of a little challenging to me to say, yeah, we're going to know exactly how much money to put in a bond or in an escrow and exactly what much to charge them. When if we look at history, we denied the CFO to Oranger for both its tree cutting and its reflective roof.
So, And I'm just kind of thinking through what you
But
said.
that's just my thing. I'm okay if we can come up with the answers to the first two questions. Can we come up with a reasonable number and how to enforce it and what it means? I
Mhm.
like the idea of them having a financial penalty here.
Well, but I think that the idea of the escrow, getting back to your example of the school where they cut too many trees and then you had a remediation plan. So the escrow would only, the bond amount would only be held until the solution got done. So I would think that yeah, like you said, cut too many trees, they're going to keep your bond money, except for the fact that you had a remediation solution. So I would think then the bond money would go back to you because you've solved it.
Well, the escrow is used to pay the escrow is used to pay the mediation.
Right.
Anyway, Jude has had her hand up. I don't want to keep talking.
Okay, go ahead, Jude.
So when I was on the planning board, we had a site plan come before us that involved some plantings, and it came during the winter. So we actually took an escrow from them and held it until they completed the plantings. Once they completed the plantings, they got their escrow back. So I don't think it's unreasonable to take some portion, and I think Jeff's question is valid, is who determines what that is. But I do think it's probably a good idea to do. And then if somebody does remediate, or doesn't, even better yet, follows the plans and doesn't cut down trees they shouldn't, it will be returned to them. You know, we're not talking about, you know, when we're talking about this kind of development in the scenic overlay, we're not talking about people who can't afford to build there. I mean, you know, let's be realistic about it. They can afford to put up some kind of escrow or bond.
Yeah. Okay. All righty.
One
Okay.
more thing. I'm totally in agreement with Jude. I want to just say one more thing. They also are totally able to have the escrow just not do anything, just give up the escrow. And not.
Well, yeah, some people may
So
choose.
if they put $100,000 in escrow and they say, you know what, I'm not going to plant any trees. Here's your money, keep it.
Yeah.
They might
Well,
just have to.
So if we were to update our scenic overlay proposed zoning law to address this escrow idea, based on the conversation we've just had, how would we, I know somebody said, talk to a forester, which means we wouldn't decide here. Do we want to decide here what the escrow ought to be, or should it be some percentage of property value? Should it be, I see Jeff shaking his head.
I have no idea. I have no idea how to decide this. I'm not smart enough to know how to decide it.
You know, does the planning board use a planner anymore? Because, you know,
We use a planner. We use a planner, and we could ask her. We have to pay her for her time. And we use a forester.
but that's all covered by escrow as well. So if somebody's doing a very big project, then
Oh, you mean at the time we ask for it rather than in
right at
general?
the beginning, I mean, we used to do that at the very beginning. We would say, we need escrow for this. We have to consult with our attorney. We have to consult with our planner. Right off the bat, we always would ask for escrow right up front. And we never had a problem getting it.
Yes.
So, because it seems to me that that's how you do it. You consult with a professional. It's not up to the planning board to try to figure that out. It's somebody who it's their job to do these things.
Would it be a
But
case by case, Jude? Is that what you're saying? It would be a case by case determination of the escrow?
Well, there's
Yeah.
a difference though. The escrow that you're talking about, Jude, is escrow to pay people to do a professional service. The escrow that this is trying to address is to put enough money away that if they do something wrong, this is their penalty. That's a much harder thing to determine what that could be. They could clear cut the land and it would be $1 million worth of damage. They could cut one tree and it could be $1,000 or $10,000 of damage. So how do you determine whether it's the $1 million or the $10,000? That's my question.
I think that's a valid question, but I also think that the other example I mentioned about what we call escrow bond, whatever you want to call it, was for somebody who couldn't do a planting in the winter time. So we took escrow so that we held it until they did their planting. So you can create something like that as well using escrow. You can use it for different things. You can use it for your attorney fees. You can use it for your planner. You can use it to hold it, you know, for landscaping or whatever you want to call it. And I think, you know, there's other tools besides the bond or the escrow, whatever you want to call it, which is, of course, if somebody does something that egregious, you take them to court. You don't give them their C of O. I mean, there are other things, but this is just maybe, if you were to establish this, it's like, we're serious about this. This is a message to you that we're watching. This is what, you know, we're serious about these rules. We're not just, this just isn't lip service. So it's just it's another tool in the toolbox, right?
I totally agree with the tool, but we don't, by just saying that there must be an escrow, we haven't given, that makes it very subjective. That says that
But
now the planning board's got to come up with a number. And is that number always going to be the same? Or is that number going to be based on, that could open the town to a lawsuit saying, well, you only gave them an escrow of $10,000. You're giving us an escrow of $1 million. What's the difference there? Unless there's something that we can say that the escrow must be based on some factor which is independent of a judgment.
But I think that that's where your professionals come in, right? You consult with your planner who comes up with a logical explanation for why it's this amount.
Well, I think that, let me just throw in something here. There's two things. One is the escrow at the beginning hopefully makes things preventive to say, hey, I know I've already put up $20,000, so I know I don't want to cut down trees. But the other fact of the matter is our scenic overlay law says if you do cut down the trees, you're going to be getting a fine. So so the escrow perhaps doesn't have to be perfect, because the escrow is something to get their attention to say, hey, you know, there's going to be consequences, and you're going to start out with the escrow. And oh, by the way, you got a whole law that says if you cut out more than the escrow, you know, covered, then you're going to wind up getting a daily fine. So
just to keep in mind, I'm not against the idea of an escrow. What I want to do is define it so that it's clear what the escrow has to be in all cases, instead of a subjective number that gets decided at the point of time that they happen to be in front of the planning board and happen to be either, you know, friendly or not friendly. And the planning board doesn't, I don't want the planning board to be in the position of saying, you know what, I like these guys, when you give them $10,000. I don't like these guys, it's going to be $1 million.
well, here, let me
very I want it to be very set.
well, here's what I'm
Based
well, here's
on acreage or based on size of building, that would be fine, but we need to define that.
Yeah, so if I were to throw out something, because size of building, and I know I'm the one that said a few minutes ago, maybe it's the property value, percentage of the property value. But the thing about it is, no matter what somebody's property value is, if they can cut down 3 trees and get a beautiful view, even if they didn't pay much for their property, they're still going to want to cut down the 3 trees. So what I might say is maybe we just make a flat fee, like it's $10,000, that's your escrow, and that's hopefully a wake up. But then, oh, by the way, if they do more damage than what the escrow covers, we're going to fine them, because we got that in the law too. So,
Right,
so maybe we take something like $10,000 and say, this is the escrow at the beginning, and let people know that we're going to fine them. If that's not enough to get them to pay attention, they're going to get a fine if they go beyond.
I'm okay with that. I don't care what the number is, as long as it's a defined number that seems reasonable. Because we do have other things, as we've all said. They have the fines that we put in place already. We have the ability to prevent them from getting a C of O.
Mhm.
Truthfully, those are the real penalties that are going to happen. Because, you know, anyone, you know, as Jude said, anyone that can do this can afford the escrow. Well, anyone that can do this can afford to lose the escrow too.
True, but then they'll have the fine. If the escrow wasn't enough to make them pay attention.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
So
I mean,
we're,
just gonna put out there that it feels a little arbitrary for me. I mean, I know we're saying, you know, it is certainly likely that most people building up there are the kind who can afford it. And like we said, if they can afford it and the real fines and punishment are yet to come, then it just seems arbitrary and impermissive to me to some extent. And we should just make, in a way, I mean, I'm not saying I couldn't see some amount, but I don't know. To me, it feels like we should make sure the fine structure is toothed and, you know, effective.
so we have and now, since I don't see any hands raised, we'll talk about the 4 zoning revision committee members. So for number 5, we're talking about, one option says we do have a bond. We do have a bond at the beginning, which is like a wake up thing that can be used to make people pay attention, to say, hey, you're going to lose your bond money if you cut too much. And oh, by the way, we got fines if you really cut too much beyond that. And as Connor just said, the other option is just say, we're not going to adopt number 5 because we do have a fee structure. If we make sure the fee structure is good enough for doing the wrong thing, we don't need to worry about a bond. So we have the one
Yes,
choice says, Go ahead.
I'm almost having from our last meeting, I'm more amenable at this point to putting prison time into the fine structure. No, I mean, it is funny, but I am serious. I'm more amenable to doing that than I am doing arbitrary escrow, because then it's just, I mean, again, it feels a little lopsided to me. I don't know.
So Jude and Jeff, Jude, you go first. Your hand is up. Do we say we're not doing 5 because we have a fine structure, or do you think that we should have a bond at the beginning to make people pay attention right from the start?
I think it makes sense to have a bond because it feels more preventative to me. The fine structure is like, okay, if you do this, then we're going to fine you. I just feel like sometimes putting it out there ahead of time, it makes more sense to me to have, you know, we call it escrow, bond or something like that, you know, good faith, whatever it is. And I don't think it's arbitrary. I think you leave it to the planner because every situation is different, right?
So you say have the planner define, instead of what I tossed out before, everybody's going to put up a $10,000 bond if you're in the scenic overlay. You're saying don't do that. Have the planner set the bond amount.
Right, depending on what the situation is. I just think it's more reasonable, the scale of the project, if you will. But that's, you know, that's variable. It can't be that it's not a cookie cutter thing.
Right. On scale. Okay. And Jeff, if you were to pick between saying, hey, don't worry about a bond up front because we have fines later, versus let's do a bond up front because we have some of the clients.
I think I've said it. I have no problem with a bond up front. I don't mind a bond up front. But I don't want it left up to a subjective individual or subjective group. I want it to be very much like the bond is X or is based on Y. And this is the value, this is what it is, so that you know what it is, so that two people who walk in with the same basic idea, the same basic thing, don't end up with different bonds.
Right. So, okay, which is why I was saying if you put out something like $10,000, somebody's got to go find the $10,000, and it's not arbitrary because everybody has to do the same thing. They know what they have to put up, and they know that if they know that they're saying goodbye to that money if they don't follow the law, and if they want the money back, they got to follow the law. But then we still have the fines. If they've gone beyond what the bond covers, then we still have the fine structure that we can address. So Connor says the fine covers. Jude says be preventative, go ahead and do the bond, but have it be variable based on what the planner says. And Jeff says has it be not subjective, have it be a clearly defined formula or algorithm for how to define it.
So can't you say something like depending on the scale of the project and the scale and location of the project, that's how the bond is determined?
It's still subjective. What's the multiple? Is it $1 a square foot? Is it $10 a square foot? Is it $1,000 a square foot? You know, unless you say something that is very clear.
Maybe that's the thing, is how much should it be a percentage of like the square footage that's being encroached into, like by tree cutting? Like if there's proposed tree cutting, are we saying then this formula comes into effect? Because then that seems like it can be fairly straightforward, you know, whatever the acreage is that's being disturbed, even if it's a fraction of amount, gets put into a formula and that determines the bond you post.
Right, but then if somebody says, well, then I'm just going to say I'm only going to be touching half an acre, that way I get a really small bond, and I go touch 5 acres. Well, then my bond amount was really small.
And all of a sudden they get hit with, you know, oops, $3,500 a day or whatever it is.
Yeah. So,
you know,
so
at that point.
Okay. Well, so I feel like we don't have a we don't have a final answer from what I'm hearing everybody say, because Connor says the fine covers it, don't worry. I like the preventative idea. I would say just make it $10,000 so it's an amount that wakes people up, but they only get it back if they, you know, if somebody has a lot of money, then they're going to not worry about losing it, but then they're going to get the fines. So I would go with a flat amount, because I agree with Jeff 100% that if we're going to have a bond, we have to have a clear algorithm, because And one of the things we tried to do with the Housing Oversight Task Force, one of the overriding principles was we want to make sure that when a developer or a property owner, when they read the law, we want to make sure they know what the answer is. It shouldn't be a guess. It shouldn't be, well, this person over here is going to make up their, they'll tell you when they've figured it out. That is subjective, and I agree with Jeff. And that's what we've been trying to do for over 2 years with the Housing Oversight Task Force, is give clear answers so somebody from reading the law knows what they can and can't do. Less is subjective, more is identified. And so that's why I say just make it $10,000. Then everybody's got to pay the same thing. If we say it's got to be based, I agree with Jeff. If we're going to make it a sliding scale, we need to have clear algorithm definition. Is the algorithm what the cost of the project is? Is that the algorithm? Square footage of the building to be built, is that the algorithm? Okay, so we can kind of come back to that. We don't really have a final answer. Number 6, the Woodstock Tree Committee suggests penalties for scenic overlay violations that are equal to penalties for regulated tree violations listed in town code, $1,000 per violation and or 1 year in jail. So we had more like 3,500 per day, although it wasn't I guess per violation. You're saying if you cut down 10 trees, that's 10 violations, so it's $10,000. But we have a different fine scale that says if you've done what you shouldn't do, you get, what is it, $3,500 a day, and then but if you get your remediation plan in right away, so the clock doesn't start ticking unless you haven't got a remediation plan in right away. And once you have a remediation plan in right away, the clock doesn't start ticking until you've missed your dates in the plan. So we have a hefty fee if somebody's negligent and does not do a remediation plan or does not follow the remediation plan, then we have a hefty fee. Do we feel like we need, I don't know how this $1,000 per violation works. I don't totally get that. If you cut down 10 trees, that's $10,000. I'm not quite sure.
Ask a question because I don't understand it either. So when the Bearsville complex cut the trees, which were regulated trees, what was the result of that as far as the fine, or what happened with that? Because I didn't follow it. All I know is they cut the trees. Does anyone know what happened?
The quick answer is no.
They planted new trees, although it's going to take a long time before they look like what they cut.
Oh, there are trees there. I just see paved blacktop. Sorry.
Well, what they did,
the trees yet.
And I think that Jeff, I'm sorry, Jude, go ahead.
You said it's the Walmart parking lot.
Yeah, well, but I believe that what they did is, I believe they moved the parking lot. So I believe that what they did, if you look at the entire property, what I'm guessing is they planted trees where the parking lot was. So if you look at the whole property, very likely what Judy Kerman is saying is very likely they did plant trees. So they might have as many trees on the property as they took down, but they're
That's not the issue. That's not the issue.
But they're in a different spot.
The issue is that those specific trees, because of where they were located, were trees that should not have been cut. Right. So I'm trying to figure out what exactly happened to them from a penalty point of view. And I don't know that I know it, or if anyone here knows what the penalty was.
I don't know. I have not heard anybody say that a penalty got stuck on them because it sounds like they did a remediation plan. And even though the trees that they planted aren't going to be anywhere near the size of the other ones for another like 40 years, it sounds like they did do a remediation plan.
I don't even know if I don't know. If my memory of the law, there were specific penalties that probably didn't happen.
Well, and now we're talking enforcement, right? And we're not doing the tree law because the tree law is not in the zoning law, and so that's not.
What I'm saying though is if we put something that's similar to the tree law in our code,
how is that
be enforced? Will it also not be enforced?
Right. Well, there you go. Another good point. So I think
that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that what we're saying regarding number 6 is we've got our own fine structure in, and we're sticking with that. Okay. I see Jude nodding her head up and down. Connor, any other thoughts, Connor? We're just going to stick with our own fine structure. We don't need to incorporate number 6.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't fully get that when on my first read either, but I think we're good.
Yeah, okay, because we have our own fine structure. Okay, all right. So we've been through that, and everybody's been very patient. Judy Kerman has been very patient, because now we're going to go to Judy Kerman's stuff, of which there's a bunch of things, and we're gonna.
I don't think it was that many, but okay.
Well, it's a bunch by the time I put everything in. Oh, resending the link. Okay, here we go. All right. So more comments from Judy, and of course let me see if I can shrink this down a little bit.
The first thing was simply about the trees, and it's not, you're not looking at that.
Okay, well, hang on. So when you say the first thing, so okay, so I see two major questions. One, environmental protection. In that regard, I personally favor prohibiting clear cutting throughout the town, not in the scenic. So that's something to, that's a good thing for us to put on our list, but we're not the tree committee, so I'm not sure if we can. So the tree committee, I think that has to go to the tree committee. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to say reply to all, and I'm going to add attachments, because I like to be complete here. So I'm just going to put in needs.
They may think that it's just not something they're ever going to get, because I bet they would love to have it.
Okay.
I have a question for you. There's the Xena cornfield. There's that used to be that open farm in Lake Hill. They used to have horses. Now they planted all these trees to block the view. But do you object to those kinds of vistas? Because they do exist. I know the Land Conservancy, I was part of it when we bought the Xena cornfield, and then got the easement from Lisa Downer across the road to preserve her fields, and the Laura Thorne fields. And so when you're saying no clear cutting throughout town, I'm not,
Clear cutting means it is an existing wood and you cut down all the trees, not a field.
But Woodstock used to be mostly fields.
Well, the Catskills used to be mostly stone quarries, and most of our forest is second growth. You don't want to go back to that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, to say that somebody can't open up.
I have a principled objection to cutting down half the trees on a property to put a lawn in.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, I think that it needs to go to the tree committee, because the tree law is not in the zoning law, so it's not our purview.
Right.
So okay. Second issue, a major purpose of the scenic overlay legislation is protecting the view shed. That's why I allow laws the planning board to specify such things as paint color, roofing, non-glare windows. Some properties extend below the 1,200-foot contour line and are technically subject to the scenic overlay law throughout. If we take the current law literally, properties that, for instance, go all the way down to Route 212 might be prevented from doing reasonable things. At the same time, parts of some properties above 1,200-foot contour line are really not visible from anywhere. Revision of the scenic overlay law that focuses on visibility from critical parts of town would be an improvement if the ZRC is able to arrange for a drone study of the current state of scenic overlay. Incorporated analysis of the view shed would be very valuable. So you got a couple of points in here, and one of them is, I thought, unlike, and Judy Kerman and I worked together on the water protection law. We did the mapping together, and we did the mapping of that. We said, if based on what ought to be protected, if a property has any part of it in that, then the whole property is protected. So when Judy drew the map of what's included in that water protection law, it went along property lines. So I think that
that was what the law said.
That's what the law said. So I think that what this law
accepted that, and we found a way to do the map that would show that.
Correct. But I think the difference here, though, is we've just said over 1,200 feet of scenic overlay. So we have never said here to follow a property line. We've just said.
No, Laura, you're wrong. That
was
the point. That was the point that Ed Sanders pointed out. He said there are some things that are below. And I looked, and the only way to understand that, the law says if any part of a property is above the 1,200-foot contour line, it is covered by the scenic overlay. That is what it says. Which means that if you have a huge piece of property that goes from 1,300 square feet down to 212, all of it is considered to be in the scenic overlay.
Okay, so I'm gonna. Did you know, you wouldn't happen to know where that is?
You've still got it in there. I think it's, wait a minute, here, yes.
So additional areas included below, which advise that locations and boundaries of said district are hereby established on a zoning map town of Woodstock. Oh, if any part with
Any part of a lot falls within the scenic overlay district, the entire lot must comply with the scenic
Okay.
overlay district regulations. There it is. That's the
There it
language.
is. But so going back then to your point, I mean, that still seems straightforward that you know whether any point of a property, because I know Judy from the planning board meetings, I mean, you can turn on, you can turn on the, whatever the,
Yeah.
you know,
I think the point is that Judith is trying to make is that if you have a large piece of land that has parts of it in scenic overlay, and you have
Mhm.
parts of it down in the valley,
Mhm.
according to the law that's written that we're writing now, you cannot cut those trees.
And that's already in the law, and you're not proposing to change it. That was the point that Ed raised. The only thing in the law that agrees with what Ed said is this. There's no specification of anything below 1,200, except that anything that goes above 1,200, that goes below 1,200, the whole thing is in.
Well, if it's in anything in yellow here, we added in response to the Ulster County Planning Board. So I don't think, if I go back, this is version
Oh, so
14 or
is that,
whatever it is.
so we added the if any part thing? Is that something that we added, Laura?
That,
Yeah, because the yellow in here was the last, and part of my other phone is gonna go away soon. So the last thing that we did was the Ulster County Planning Board gave their input, and what their input was the, because we had wording that said, you know, sections of Woodstock above 1,200 feet and some things below 1,200 feet. And Ulster County Planning Board said, if you're going to say you can have some things below 1,200 feet, you got to say which ones they are.
well,
So
that is why I am suggesting that be areas below 1,200 feet that are in the view shed, or some other way of specifying it so that it isn't like things that are way down in the valley.
No, I understand your point, but I was just trying to answer Jeff's question. Did we add the yellow? And I was just trying to reset and say, yes, we did add the yellow. And here's when we added the yellow. We added the yellow.
Language.
I'm sorry, say again?
I am looking at the old language right now.
Okay. I mean, I could pull up an old level too, but since you've got it, that's good.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about that. So that's when we added that.
Yeah, okay.
I
So-
looked at it when Ed raised it and I found it, so I think it does.
Ed said that there were other areas that were designated in the town and they're on a map. And I don't know if anybody pursued trying to find that map.
Well, and I thought, Judy, you actually found it. And I thought, Judy Kerman, I thought that you put something.
No, nobody seems to know where it is except for what Jerry Washington gave me, which is the scenic overlay shapefile that I've always used, and it is just exactly the 1,200 and above.
And I thought, and Ed Sanders would know, because I thought Ed Sanders, because he doesn't.
I think he's wrong about this, is all I'm
Well,
saying.
Well, so
He was the creator of it. I don't think he's wrong.
If he can show me where it is, I would be very happy to add it to the scenic overlay that I mapped. I cannot find any evidence of anything except that it said that if any part falls below 1,200, it's included, and that's in the old law.
yeah, and I'm moving around here trying to see if there's any other yellow that got added. We didn't add too much yellow, or the forester we added.
Here's where we have, this is what we have in the current law. It's 260-13, application of overlay districts. It reads, where a lot falls within more than one overlay district, the requirements of all overlay districts shall apply. Okay, it doesn't. So basically what that's saying is the lot, if the lot extends through an overlay district, that the entire overlay district affects, that the whole lot's affected by the overlay district. To some degree, it
That's
says that.
probably
It's
where
kind
I
of weird.
found it.
It says in a weird way, because it says where a lot falls within more than one overlay district, the requirements of all said overlay districts shall apply. So if it's only a scenic overlay, then the part of the lot that's not in scenic overlay doesn't seem to apply.
Well,
No,
well,
that's
I'm not
not the
sure what
way I
that's
read
saying.
it.
That's not what it's saying.
so I want to go
There's
to
no place I can see it says that the whole lot is applicable.
But the way I read what you just found is if any part of the lot is in the scenic overlay, then the entire lot is subject to the scenic overlay limitations.
No, because it says if it's in two, if it's in more than one scenic,
No.
if it's in more than one overlay.
No,
then-
she's talking about the part that the section of the law that we're reviewing now.
well,
Okay,
let me just go to 269, because I think part of Ed's answer was look in 269. So I'm trying to go to 269. 260
260-9.
zoning map. 269.
Zoning
So-
map.
Yeah, the locations and boundaries of said districts are hereby established as shown on the zoning map, town of Woodstock. Said map, together with all explanatory matter thereon and all amendments thereto, is hereby adopted and is declared to be an appurtenant part of this chapter and may be amended in the same manner as any other part of this chapter. Said map shall be kept up to date and shall be located in the office of the town clerk for the use and benefit of the public. So the trick is we need to go to the town clerk and say, show me the map.
I don't think she has it.
Okay,
I think I looked into that.
okay.
If she has it, I would be delighted, and I can certainly add whatever we find to the maps that I've been maintaining. But the
Okay.
town of Woodstock does not have a very good institutional memory, in case you haven't noticed.
Right, so what Laura pointed out was exactly the phrase, was exactly what we were talking about last time we met. When Ed Sanders said that there were places on the zoning map that were below 12,000 feet
Right,
that were in the scenic overlay. So I don't know that, but Ed said this is what makes them in the scenic overlay, this paragraph.
this
There's
map,
a
right,
map
right.
Somewhere.
Right. So we pointed to this paragraph. So what we did when the county said, describe what's below 1,200 feet, we pointed to this paragraph that said it's on a map in the town clerk's office. So the trick is to go find it. Does she? Yeah. Okay.
It's not a really good answer. It's some map somewhere that someone may or may not have available. Is
Right.
gonna Find what you can
That
do.
may be so old that
Yeah,
it's falling
answer.
apart,
Right.
if we even have it.
Right. Right. So anyway, so we have to find out that. So back to Judy Kerman's point of disagreeing with the statement. So if any part of a lot, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Judy. If we had one lot that went from the scenic overlay all the way down to the
We do.
We do.
So what's the solution in the words?
It seems to me that any part of that lot that is within the view shed,
How did you define a view shed?
well, we need to define the view shed. That's why I'm in favor of having a zoning study. Now, the other way to think about it is, if it is in R8, then it's already something we ought to look at the environmental aspects. And some of them are.
Well, I wonder whether because I wonder whether some of those huge lots that go from the top all the way to the bottom, I wonder if they span districts. Maybe we should say if it's in the R8, because R8 is intended to be preserved property, maybe we can just say the parts of it that are in R8 must follow it. But if we have parts in R,
I mean,
I
the
can't
answer-
get to my maps while you've got the screen share up, but
the
I
answer-
could look at that.
The property owner's answer to this is to do a minor subdivision at exactly 1,200 square feet or 12,000 feet above sea level.
well, there you go.
I mean, really,
They'd have to pay for a survey, but that might be a sensible thing to do. On the other hand, there are things below 1,200 that should be in the district because they are visible. That's probably why they did it that way, if we can find out what they did.
yeah, I think that was the reasoning for the other parts. I think it was on other than the tallest peaks, but peaks that were definitely in the view shed. Is why it was below whatever the limit is.
Can I ask you to put this question off for a little while, and I'm going to see, I mean, I can't get to my maps as long as you've got this thing open. I could
Right.
get to my maps and look.
Well, I also wanted to ask, because sometimes our meetings go an hour and a half and we usually cut it off at an hour and a half because people get kind of done. They get kind of done after an hour and a half. So do we, yeah, so we did not have a meeting scheduled 2 weeks from today. And I may or may not be able to, my sister's coming to visit. I don't know when, she didn't tell me yet. So if she's visiting, it'd be hard for me to meet, so I think it's gonna be hard for me to meet in 2 weeks. So our next meeting is in 4 weeks. And I know, Connor, your hope was that we would get this in and all popped in so that before the building season happened, we'd be done with the scenic overlay, but here we are. And is it a problem if we discuss this next on the second Monday in September? Is that a problem?
Probably have to, because to be honest, it's not even that I can't keep talking about this. I have to go get ready. I'm going back to this job tomorrow, and I'll be in Big Indian for the week with very little.
Okay. So why don't we hold here? So we're still going through Judy Kerman's input, and we will pick up here talking about the mapping when we resume.
I will look at the mapping now and I'll tell you what I find in an email.
Okay. Oh, okay. But
I can't do it while you've got the screen share up.
Right. Well, I can stop sharing, but the issue is going to be, I think people are going to want to
I understand.
call it a night. Yeah, and Jude is saying, yeah. Yeah, okay. So we'll pick up and Judy Kerman, I hope you can join us the second Monday in September, because we're going through just your stuff. So hopefully you can join us to be part of the conversation for the rest of your stuff.
Okay, I'll put it in my calendar. I'm looking at the map right now, actually.
Okay. And I'm looking at your kitty right now.
Okay, I need to see. Here's R8. I see the problem. Scenic overlay is up above it. Let me pull it down.
There's a lot of the scenic overlay in R5.
Oh, okay.
You know, because 212 at some points is already 1,100 above sea level.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, R8 is definitely higher than the scenic overlay, almost everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that is correct. So R8 does not solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So we're doing so we'll pick up
Second Monday in September.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my calendar to verify the date. So that is September 11th. So pick up on September 11th. Judy.
Oh man, I'm supposed to be presenting to other members of the planning board about GIS, but it's at 4:30. I just hope I'm going to be still sane.
Okay, so on a Monday, you're doing that on a Monday?
In the afternoon, because that's when we can get it.
Okay, all right. So we'll pick up. Well, and then the other thing. So and Connor, I know Connor, you and I have talked about the priorities of things and the importance of the STR, which I certainly agree is very important. But I think wrapping up scenic overlay makes sense. So my plan is that we'll keep working on scenic overlay till we're done with it, and then we'll pick up STR. Connor, are you in agreement with that as a priority as we work this? Because we've agreed that we're going to work the STR together as a team because we're a small group. So Connor, are you in agreement?
Sure. I mean, I certainly support us all working together on STR. I just think, let's keep interested in the meantime and come back with stuff to kind of talk about and percolate the conversation as we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
One of the things I said in my email is that I think Peter Cross in particular and the zoning and the planning board in general might want a look at the scenic overlay stuff that you're doing, just to give you advice and counsel.
Well, the thing is, we already got the planning board's input. So we already got the Woodstock planning board's input, and we already incorporated the Woodstock planning board's input. So if you're saying show it to them again, we can definitely do that, but we got their input quite a long time ago.
Okay.
We're
never
talking
mind.
about STRs, right? Not scenic
Oh,
Oh,
no,
overlay.
I'm talking about the scenic overlay.
Yeah, scenic
Oh,
overlay.
yeah.
We
Overlay.
definitely got, yeah, we
That's
got
fine.
Woodstock planning board input quite a while ago. You guys are really prompt, and it was really helpful. And I forget
Well,
what you.
I know that Peter is very eager to have the view shed information done one way or the other. So that's part of the question about the drone, but that's a later issue.
Well, if I should be inviting Peter to our September 11th meeting to talk specifically about view shed, I could invite him.
Maybe. I mean, he knows that ground. He's walked it literally.
Invite to
Yeah.
11 to discuss view shed. Okay. Okay. And then our momentum will be greater come September, because then we'll be back to
Because
2
I will
meetings a
tell
month.
you that nobody on planning board had really had it penetrate to us, including Peter, that there are areas below 1200 that are in the scenic overlay.
Yeah, right. Right. Okay. Yep. Yep.
So the wording we have now would be a major change.
Yep. Okay. So I'll invite Peter to the September 11th meeting.
Hopefully Ed will be here too.
I'm sorry, was that?
I said, hopefully Ed will be here too.
Well, yes, totally.
Well, I will talk to Jackie about whether she's got the map. I mean, I think I did and she doesn't, but I looked at what I have, and what I have I got from Jerry Washington.
So,
Right.
the other thing that Ed said at the last meeting, Judith, is that, I don't know if you remember, but years ago, there was a map in front of the planning board office. That's the map he's referring to. It was a big ass map. It was like.
I don't go
it was
upstairs,
like
so
huge.
I don't know what is in front of the.
So it might be on Melissa's wall, Jeff, is what you're saying. It might be on Melissa's wall.
May or may not be there. It may have been taken down, but if you ask Jackie about that map, she'll probably know which one you mean.
All right, I will.
Right. But asking Melissa if she has is another good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just send them both an email tonight, so that way they'll get it.
Yeah. Cool. Very, very cool. So Judy to pursue, Judy K to pursue. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We've gone long. Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Jude, rather. Anybody? I'll second that. Laura, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Okay. I want to thank everybody and Judy Kerman. Well, it's been a pleasure to have all the 4 ZRC members, but Judy Kerman, it's been a pleasure to have you here too. And we have a great we had a great discussion of a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge and a lot of caring. So I thank you to everybody. So we'll talk soon.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye bye.